In 2011, scientists from Chile found a weird-looking fossil in Antarctica that looked like a squashed football. Almost 10 years later, the rock just sat on a shelf in Chile's National Museum of Natural History with no specific label. It went by The Thing in the museum because it looked like something from a science fiction movie. When the scientists finally got their hands on the strange fossil, it turned out it was actually a giant soft-shell egg from around 66 million years ago. This one is more than 11 inches long and 7 inches wide. A regular chicken egg is just 2.5 inches long, and an ostrich egg is almost 6 inches long for comparison. So, the Thing won the title of the biggest soft-shell egg ever found and the second largest egg of any animal we know of. The only bigger egg that was ever found was that of the extinct Madagascan elephant bird, which is also 1.5 times as tall as Michael Jordan. The bird, not the egg. The Antarctic egg is also special because it's the first fossil ever found in this part of the world. So, whoever left it there must have been one big creature, probably a giant sea turtle that lived long ago, like a mosasaur. This is surprising because most scientists thought these creatures didn't even lay eggs. So this discovery could change what we know about them. The egg is also unique because it has a thin eggshell and no pores, which is totally different from most dinosaur eggs. It actually looks more like the eggs of lizards and snakes, but it came from a giant creature related to these animals. No known dinosaurs or flying reptiles from that time and place were big enough to lay such a huge egg, so it must have been a mosasaur after all. But we can't be 100% sure. Scientists did a lot of work and studied 259 types of living reptiles, like lizards and snakes, and their eggs. From this, they figured out that the mommy who laid the egg was probably at least 23 feet long, not counting her tail. During the late Cretaceous period, this part of Antarctica might have been like a nursery. Paleontologists have found bones of tiny mosasaurs and plesiosaurs in the same area, along with bones from the grown-up ones. Archaeologists in Norway made another cool but literally discovery and found dozens of arrows that had been hidden in ice for 6,000 years. They were melting out of a large ice patch in the high mountains, covering an area of about 45 football fields. In 2014 and 2016, when the summers were extra warm, scientists went to an ice patch called Langfoni to look around. They also found lots of reindeer bones and antlers there. Some of the arrows were whole and some in pieces, along with 5 arrowheads around the melting ice patch. This is more arrows than have been found at any other frozen site in the world. Some of the 68 found arrows date back to the Neolithic period, and the newest ones are from the 14th century of the Common Era. Ice is like the perfect time machine that can preserve whatever ends up there in an almost perfect condition. Langfoni became famous as one of the first ice patch sites after a local hiker found a 3,300-year-old leather shoe right next to its edge. Scientists are studying places like this to understand how people used these sites and how the ice patches from Norway to North America changed over time. Now, once upon a time, around 32,000 years ago, to be exact, a squirrel buried some seeds near a river in Siberia. Am I the only one getting the Ice Age vibes? Anyway, these seeds belong to a plant with cute white flowers. Thousands of years later, a group of scientists found these seeds buried deep in the frozen ground, about as far down as a 12-story building is tall. The seeds were surrounded by ice and bones of animals, like mammoths, bison, and woolly rhinoceroses. The mature seeds had been damaged, maybe by some squirrel, but some of the younger seeds still had good plant parts inside them. The scientists carefully took those out and put them in small containers to help them grow. And here comes the coolest part. They were able to grow the plants. Their flowers were shaped a little differently from the flowers of the same plant that grows today. After a year, the Ice Age plant even made new seeds. Based on this, the scientists suggested that permafrost could be a depository for an ancient gene pool, and we could find extinct species there and bring them back to life. Scientists on an icebreaker in Antarctica were looking for whales but found something way more unusual. The camera behind the ship, which is as heavy as a car, detected 16 million ice fish nests on the floor of the Weddell Sea. The nests were located about every 10 inches in all directions and covered an area of 93 square miles, which is slightly bigger than the whole of Washington, D.C. The colony even had a distinct border, which was a line in the sand. The scientists were in the area because they were studying a special spot in the ocean where the water was a little warmer than the water around it. In this warmer water, they found tiny animals called zooplankton near the top. When the young ice fish hatch, they swim up to this area to eat the zooplankton before going back down to the seafloor to grow up and have their own offspring. Since there was so much food, it made sense to see ice fish in this warm water. But they didn't expect to find such a huge number of ice fish nests, much more than anyone had ever seen before. New Zealand's Antarctic Heritage Fund found some old photo negatives in a hut in Antarctica. They turned out to be unique images from the Ross Sea Party. It was a famous failed expedition led by Ernest Shackleton. He wanted to become the first person to cross Antarctica by land, from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea, passing through the South Pole. But things went wrong when their ship, the Aurora, was blown out to sea. They had to use the hut from another explorer, Captain Robert Falcon Scott. His goal was to be the first person to reach the North Pole, but sadly, he didn't succeed either. The negatives were made of cellulose nitrate and were found stuck together in the small box. The Trust took the negatives back to New Zealand, where they carefully separated them and discovered 22 hidden images. Many of the photos were damaged, but the Trust could still recognize some familiar places around McMurdo Sound, a well-known area in Antarctica. No one knows for sure who took the pictures. In December 2021, some scientists noticed a strange mark on the Larsen Ice Shelf, a giant sheet of ice off the eastern coast of Antarctica. They thought it might be a river flowing under the ice, so they drilled down over 1,600 feet to check it out. They expected to find water, but they didn't expect to see that the water was full of fast-moving creatures called amphipods. The scientists also found that the water in the underground river had unusual layers of currents moving in different directions, which they still don't fully understand. Another surprising thing happened during their research. On December 20th of the same year, a volcano erupted far away in Tonga, and the pressure waves from the eruption were detected all the way down in the ice river in Antarctica. It shows how everything on our planet is connected, even in the most distant places.
In a frosty Canadian park, hidden deep beneath layers of thick ice, scientists discovered a bizarre skeleton they named the Frozen Dragon. The skeleton had been in the frozen ice for millions of years. It took experts decades to work out the species of this strange fossil. It was identified as a new genus of pterosaur. Pterosaurs were massive flying reptiles with wingspans of over 16 feet. Their heads were 3.5 times the size of their bodies. Pterosaurs lived 76 million years ago, when they soared above the dinosaurs. Scientists described them as the biggest, meanest, and most bizarre animals that ever flew. The new genus has been named Cryodragon boreas, which translates to Frozen Dragon of the North Winds. In 2013, a young mountaineer was climbing one of the tallest mountains in Western Europe, Mont Blanc. He noticed a strange metal box poking out of the snow. The mountaineer pried the box open and found that it was filled with precious rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. The climber immediately handed the box to the authorities. It was discovered that the box likely belonged to a passenger on one of 2 flights from India that crashed into the mountain over 50 years ago. The box was valued to be worth over $200,000, and authorities are still searching for the heir to the small box of treasures. In northwest Siberia in 2007, a reindeer herder was on an outing with his sons when he noticed something strange in the ice. The man realized it was a frozen mammoth calf and immediately contacted the local museum. The calf was named Luba, and was the best preserved mammoth mummy in the world at the time of its discovery. Luba had been in the ice for 41,800 years and is around 30 to 35 days old. From trunk to tail, the mammoth calf is roughly the same size as a large calf. If you're interested in seeing for yourself, Luba travels to museums all around the world. On the frozen continent of Antarctica, covered in layers of ice and snow, is Mount Erebus, the frozen volcano. The volcano was discovered in the middle of an eruption in 1841 by explorers on an Arctic expedition. The volcano is over 12,000 feet tall and has been active for the last 1.3 million years. Deep within the middle of the volcano is a huge crater filled with large volumes of molten lava. The volcano has occasional explosions, which means it's classified as being in continuing eruption. However, these eruptions are nothing to worry about because they're generally rather small. Back in 1991, two hikers were traveling across the Italian Alps when they stumbled across a body that they presumed to belong to a recently lost hiker. The duo trudged back down the mountain to report their unfortunate findings. Once the remains were recovered, it was clear that the body was not recent at all. Scientists determined that the Iceman was more than 5,000 years old and named him Otzi. The discovery was unlike anything scientists had ever before seen because the body was so well preserved. For years, Otzi was studied by scientists who discovered that our ancestors have a lot more in common with us than we ever knew before. Otzi was covered in ink body art. Research done on the contents of his stomach revealed that his last meal was dry cured meat, similar to the bacon we eat today. Otzi has at least 19 relatives living today, somewhere in Central Europe. Scientists were researching ancient squirrel burrows in Siberia when they came across something interesting. One of the squirrels had hidden away precious seeds deep beneath the ground. The seeds had been encased in ice for 32,000 years. The seeds were for the flower Silene stenophilia, which had long since gone extinct. Amazingly, scientists were able to recover plant tissue from inside the seeds and grow an entire crop of flowers. They've since reintroduced the previously extinct flower to natural habitats all across the world. In 1930, a team of Norwegian scientists sailed around the Arctic Ocean, conducting research on the seas and glaciers. They reached White Island, a dangerous and icy land no human had set foot on before, or so they thought. The scientists were shocked to discover the tip of a small boat sticking out of the snow. Frozen inside the boat, they found scientific equipment and various personal items, including a jacket monogrammed S.A. Undre. They had discovered the wreck of the famous Undre Arctic balloon expedition. In 1897, Swedish explorers, led by Undre, attempted to travel to the North Pole by hydrogen balloon. No one had ever heard from them ever again. People only found out what happened to them when the wreck was discovered 33 years later. It turns out that the balloon had crashed on White Island only 2 days after departing from Sweden. The explorers traveled along the island on a small makeshift boat, but were unable to make it any further. The best preserved woolly mammoth ever found was discovered in an area of permafrost in Siberia in 2010. Scientists named the frozen mammoth Yucca after the small village near where it was found. Yucca had been frozen for 39,000 years and is thought to have been around 6 to 8 years old. Because Yucca is so well preserved, it has been studied for years and provided new information about mammoths. In 2019, scientists reported that they were able to activate cells taken from Yucca's tissue. Maybe one day we'll have woolly mammoths roaming the land. From looking at pictures and videos of Antarctica, the continent appears to be freezing cold, covered in snow, and flat, except for a few small hills. Scientists believe that too. When studying the Gomburtsev Mountains in the early 2000s, they were shocked to discover that the small rocky hills were actually the peak of a gigantic mountain formation under a mile of snow. Using radar technology, researchers worked out that the mountains are really around 10,000 feet tall and sprawl across 750 miles. This is around the same size as the European Alps, except hidden under tons of ice and snow. At a gold mine in Siberia, A businessman was examining a nearby river when he noticed something interesting in the frost. It was a small woolly rhino calf that was later named Sasha. The woolly rhino has been extinct for 15,000 years. It's thought that Sasha could have been frozen in the ice for up to 39,000 years. Sasha is unique because it's the only full-body woolly rhino to have ever been discovered. Glaciers around the northern Italian town of Pelo have begun to melt. Artifacts from decades and even centuries ago have been discovered pouring out of the ice. Personal belongings from soldiers have been found, things like diaries, photographs, and even love letters. Historians have even uncovered an entire cabin preserved beneath the ice. The cabin was filled with hard metal helmets and clothes. In 1845, Sir John Franklin embarked on an ill-fated expedition to the North Pole. The crew traveled on two ships, HMS Erebus and the ironically named HMS Terror. The expedition met with disaster, and both ships were lost to the icy waters. In 2016, the HMS Terror was discovered by a team of researchers. Despite being lost for 170 years, the freezing cold waters had maintained the ship in pristine condition. Scientists describe the ship as frozen in time. Dinner plates and glasses were still on shelves, beds and desks were still in order, and even the passengers' luggage appeared to be in good condition. The HMS Erebus was also discovered nearby, but due to changing water conditions, the ship wasn't in great shape. The glacial ice surrounding a mountain passageway in Norway that was notoriously used by the Vikings has revealed hundreds of ancient artifacts. One of these artifacts was a giant unopened wooden box that was welded together. Researchers were beside themselves with anticipation, waiting to open this box. They believed it would be filled with Viking treasures or artifacts that would give us an insight into ancient society. When they opened the box, all that was inside was a plain old beeswax candle. It turns out that this box wasn't actually as old as they thought it was. By analyzing the candle, they discovered that the box dates back to the 17th century. The age of the Vikings had ended by the 11th century. It's likely that the candle box belonged to a farmer who was shipping it from his summer farm to his winter farm to light up the long nights. The legend goes that a dwarf named Fafnir was famous for his strength and courage. Because of his qualities, he was tasked with protecting their kingdom. Dwarves were known to gather a lot of wealth, so a bit of added security was a must. I mean, they lived in a house made from gold and precious gems. But Fafnir also had another special talent. He was able to shapeshift. Tricked by Loki, the Norse spirit of mischief, Fafnir was taken over by his greed and the shine of his father's treasure. He decided he did not want to share any of it, not even with his father or his brothers. He stole it and ran away all by himself to a place he'd be hard to find, the middle of the desert. To protect his wealth, Fafnir transformed into a huge dragon. His new appearance looked like a huge snake, powerful and scary. His magical powers did not end there, though. Because the dragon couldn't fly, he also spread poison all around his new home, so no one had a chance to survive if they wanted to take his gold away. Fafnir was soon defeated by a young hero named Sigurd. The legend of Fafnir tries to explain why family is more important than greed. It also shows the many magical powers dragons possess. But the most interesting part is that it's quite a good example of how dragons came to be in our tales. But hey, this is just one of the many stories mentioning dragons. Just switch on your TV or peek into any bookstore, and you'll surely stumble upon dragons somewhere. Variations of dragon-like creatures have been described in stories from all over the world, from Asia to Northern Europe. Most of these creatures are depicted with reptile-like bodies, wings, and claws. And the scariest trait of them all, they can breathe fire out of their mouths. The name of these creatures comes from the Latin word draconum, which translates to huge serpent. But let's take a trip down memory lane to see how it all started. An Asian historian, for example, discovered some fossils back in the 4th century BCE and decided that he'd stumbled upon dragons. It's easy to understand why he got so confused if you look at a fossilized Stegosaurus. It was 30 feet long, 14 feet tall, and covered in armored plates and spikes. The Nile crocodile might have gotten mistaken for a dragon too. It still exists today and lives in sub-Saharan Africa, but it may have been more popular in ancient times. When reaching maturity, Nile crocodiles can grow up to 18 feet long. But that's not all. It can even walk with its body off the ground, and some were even pictured standing on their two back legs. Goannas are dragon-like lizards that live in Australia. Large as they are, they also have razor-sharp teeth and claws, and are also known to even produce venom. It's easy to see why goannas may be the source for the Australian version of dragons. When humans first discovered whale bones back in the day, we had no idea these animals lived in the sea. Given their size, we surely must have thought they were dangerous. And because we rarely see whales, if we don't go underwater of course, they were poorly understood and easily mistaken for dragons too. Probably the most interesting source of dragon mythology is actually the human brain. In a book called An Instinct for Dragons, there was a theory which claimed that dragons existed in almost all ancient cultures because we had evolved to fear large predators to survive. We aren't the only mammals to do this. Monkeys have an innate fear of snakes and large cats too, for example. When you combine these natural traits with folklore, you get a lot of dragon stories everywhere, adapted to each region. Reptilian beasts with magical powers date back as far as the origins of human civilization itself. I'm talking about ancient Mesopotamia. Humans back then used to believe in all sorts of creatures, but their head spirit was Marduk, the patron of the city of Babylon. If you look at the artwork from back then, Marduk was depicted with a snake-like dragon at his side. It could be either nice or vengeful, depending on what mood it was in. If you want to sign up to become a dragon, the first thing they'll ask you at the interview will be if you can breathe fire, of course. So scientists have tried to look into some ways that could make it real for dragons to breathe out fire without damaging their throats. To do that, they examined the bombardier beetle. This eccentric insect can pack up some really hot substances in its belly. Once the creature gets bothered by something, it shoots out a fiery load of chemicals. In all fairness, it's not really fire, but it does burn, so it's close enough. Going back to dragons, they'd need to have similar glands in their throats to produce the same effect. But where do dragons come from? They didn't just appear out of nowhere, regardless of the source you consult. Some tales, like that of Fafnir, say that even humans can turn into dragons, but the most popular theory is that dragons start out as eggs. Some sources even draft a series of stages a dragon has to go through during its life. Everything starts with hatching. Dragons are said to eat their way out of those shells and break the sides of the egg. Then there's the wormling stage, which is what dragon specialists, or dragonologists if you like, call a newly hatched dragon. It's still small and weak, but don't worry, it can take care of itself pretty well. The rest of a dragon's life stages are pretty self-explanatory. There are grown-up dragons, then ancient ones. A dragon's life ends when it reaches the twilight stage. Some sources claim dragons never stopped growing. Others even say they never reach the end of their lives. They just pass on to another type of spiritual existence. Dragons are known to be the symbol of a lot of different things, but that all depends on their origin. In some regions of Asia, they are known to bring luck, power, and wealth. To become a powerful warrior in Britain, you'd need to first defeat a dragon. That's why you often see them on flags. The flag of Wales, for example, has a large red dragon on a green and white background. Western stories aren't as nice to dragons. They are often seen as evil and vengeful. Another myth associated with dragons is that they love gold and precious stones. This greedy side of their temperament seems to date back to ancient Greece, where dragons were tasked with guarding treasures. Some of these guarding dragons were seen in such tales as The Hobbit and in the Harry Potter series. As for dragons' magical abilities, they also vary a lot. Some were said to have blood with supernatural properties. Some were rumored to be able to speak. Others were famous for their wisdom. A lot of dragons in ancient literature could fly or shapeshift, even into humans. Some real-life creatures got their names thanks to bearing a resemblance to dragons, like the dragonfly that has more than 5,000 subspecies we know about. It got its name from folklore tales, as Europeans in the Middle Ages saw it as an evil insect. Dragonflies were accused of some really nasty things, like biting people's eyes and mouths. But the creature that resembles mythical dragons most is a reptile called the flying dragon. They're seen in wooded areas of Southeast Asia. They don't really have wings per se, but parts of their ribs are elongated to support some extra skin that allows them to leap through the air between trees. Those wings are also brightly colored and contrast with their brown bodies.
You're on vacation, taking a trip to the family estate set in the cold Scottish Highlands. An old ruined castle sits alone, a token of your family's heritage. You spent your childhood in the nearby forest chasing squirrels, and through adulthood, you have enjoyed walking every acre of it. There's always something new to be found. As you walk the millionth time through the trees, you find a small stone building. It's half covered in dirt and overgrown grass. Curious, you've never seen this before. You dig away at the dirt and pull away the grass, eager to learn what's within. You find a small, weather-worn door, large enough for a dog. Maybe it's a royal doghouse. You pull the old door and look inside. It's a small room with nothing in it except for an old sack. You grab the sack, taking a closer look, trying to identify the fabric. But wait a minute, there's something inside of it. You look inside and find an egg about the size of an ostrich. Dogs don't lay eggs. Looking at the egg closely, you notice it's very old and heavier than you expected. You shake it gently, feeling the sensation of liquid inside. Suddenly, you feel some energy coming from it. Shocked, you attempt to throw the egg away, but stop yourself. For some reason, you feel a sense of longing towards the egg, as though it belongs to you. You hold it close, protecting it, and carry it back to the homestead. You sit by the egg, lying on the kitchen table, waiting and expecting something to happen. Your eyes become heavy, and slowly they close. Just as your eyelids touch, the egg wriggles slightly. You open your eyes in response, but the egg remains still. Did I imagine it? It wriggles again and again, and now it's constantly shaking. The egg rolls around on the table, cracks begin appearing, and something inside is hitting the shell with great ferocity, desperate to be released. Finally, the shell breaks open with an almighty thrust from the small resident. It stands with its arms stretched into the air and squeals out to the world,
"I am free!"
You look towards what should be a bird of some sort, but this is a very strange bird. 4 legs, wings, reptile skin. It's a dragon. Wait, what? A dragon?
Yes, a dragon.
It says to you after reading your thoughts. How? What? You're struggling to find your words.
You are the descendant of these holdings, are you not?
You nod, confused even more because it can speak.
As per the decree of 1061, we few that are laid within an egg are loyal to the caretaker side.
You look at one another. The dragon is definitely waiting for some response. You are so confused you can't utter a word.
Have you chosen a name for me to which I am to respond?
A name. Right, I will call you Dog. Dog responds by bowing honorably.
It is a worthy name I hope to bring glory to.
Glory? I don't understand why you're here, though. Why now? Dog explains that when elements of magic within the air react, it creates a perfect environment for dragon eggs to hatch. From a scientific perspective, changes within the Earth's atmosphere could probably explain all this. Whether it's the temperature, hydrogen levels, or changes in the ocean, it's impossible to determine. You accept that it's just magic. Exhausted by the events, you head to bed. The following morning, you awake, expecting to see Dog waiting for you. He's nowhere to be found. You go outside. It's all very quiet. No birds are singing. The distant sheep are also quiet. Suddenly, Dog flies down. He's grown to the size of a cow. He's grown way too fast, though you think you know why. You try not to imagine what he's been up to.
First lesson, human, get on.
Dog positions himself to allow you onto his back. You don't question him, trusting that he knows what he's doing. Without warning, he begins to run fast toward an open clearing, just like an airplane, as he gathers enough speed. With the force of the wind, you both take off. You speed through the air, gaining altitude. You hold on tight. Passing through near misses between trees, Dog makes immediate turns, and you wish you were safely on the ground. You can hear Dog's voice within your head.
You will act as my eyes as well, watching from where I cannot.
I see trees all around. There are some hills in the distance.
Not now.
Dog interrupts.
You will look out for danger, not observe the scenery.
You are flying for some hours, and you have no idea where you might be. You're too concerned about hanging on, and it's cold. You should have brought warmer clothes.
Now jump.
You jump without hesitation, trusting Dog's orders, but you quickly regret this move as you fall to the ground. The distant trees below are quickly becoming larger.
Spread your arms out and grab on.
Dog pulls in beneath. You land on top of him and grasp him immediately.
Good job. We only get one try at that trick.
Dog laughs. You safely land in a landscape you're unfamiliar with.
Fetch some wood. We'll make camp.
Annoyed at taking orders from what's meant to be your dragon, you respectfully go to collect wood as Dog flies away. You collect a good pile all stacked neatly. Dog lands with a sudden thud next to it. He doesn't acknowledge your hard work and starts it up with one puff. He lays peacefully and drifts off to sleep, snoring loudly straight away. You enjoy the warmth, but it's still uncomfortable on the ground. You feel it would be appropriate to lay next to Dog, and he gives you a flick of his tail.
Oh, man.
With his eyes still closed, he grumbles,
I am not furniture. I am a dragon.
and goes back to sleep. You lay down elsewhere and drift off to sleep uncomfortably. As you wake up the next morning, there's hardly any warmth coming from the charcoal remains. Dog is nowhere to be found. Not surprised, you sigh, worst dragon ever. Dog arrives in his classic unexpected style and throws you some cooked meat. You don't ask where he got it. Best not to know.
Eat well. Today is our biggest task. Danger approaches.
Dog stands looking out towards the unknown. You eat your meal, enjoying the little something this partnership has provided. You look up and notice that Dog's size has grown twice as large overnight. You gather to his back and climb up. His wings are so large now he doesn't need a runway and takes flight without warning.
Be on the lookout today. Today is the day.
As Dog rushes forward, you ask, "What day?"
Just be focused.
Dog yells. Together, you fly north. The air is cooler, but Dog's body warmth is greater today. Dark clouds form in the distance. Flying closer, you can see things in the distance, unsure to make out what they are. Dog realizes your concern.
Ice goils.
What?
The same magic that allowed me to hatch brought them from the ice. They will want to turn the world frozen. Only we can stop them.
You're concerned as you observe their numbers. There might be dozens, if not hundreds, and possibly more hiding in the clouds behind them. As you approach, Dog speeds toward them, fending them off, breathing fire and biting. You hold on tight, trying to avoid the sharp ends of their wings. Their numbers are too many. Dog is becoming overwhelmed. An ice squirrel from overhead speeds down, targeting Dog, realizing he's unable to do anything as he's facing several of those at once. You leap towards it. You hit it in midair. It's like hitting a stone wall. You make no effect apart from distracting it. It flicks you away and you fall. Dog sees you, but he's unable to help, so he cries out to you. You fall helpless to the ground.
I've got you.
You can hear a girl's voice. She grabs you by the arm, pulling you onto another dragon. You smile and then turn around to see that there isn't just one, but dozens more, all flying to save Dog. The group of dragons targets the ice squirrels, rescuing Dog. Then they turn to defeat the remaining ice squirrels. Regardless of the number of ice squirrels, the dragon force easily defeats them. The remaining flee even further north. The dragons and their riders land together, gathering to meet one another. Dog abruptly lands next to you. You turn to the girl that saved you. "Do you get along with your dragon?" you ask.
What do you mean? We're best friends.
She laughs and hugs her dragon. Good for you, you sigh as Dog pats you on the head.
Many terrifying animals live deep beyond the waves, like this vampire squid living 3,000 feet below the surface in almost complete darkness. This animal has a cloak, like a vampire's. That's why it's called the vampire squid. Deep down at the bottom, it can't use ink to defend itself. So this animal has developed an unusual tactic. It glows slightly to scare away predators. If this tactic fails, the vampire squid can turn its body inside out, revealing tiny spikes. When you translate its scientific name, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, it literally means vampire squid from the nether. Despite its terrifying looks, it's a harmless ocean animal. This previous creature was not from space, but this object definitely is. Before Elon Musk found a way to reuse rockets, NASA would simply drop old ones after launching astronauts into space, most of the time in the ocean or deserts. In 2012, Jeff Bezos launched a mission to find the Apollo 11 rocket. They found it by using sonar, but it was in terrible condition. It was sitting on the bottom of the ocean, not far from the predicted site. They were able to rescue the engine and reconstruct 2 of them. The most famous lost city is Atlantis, but sadly, we still haven't discovered it. However, Heraklion was also just a myth until one British pilot saw something that looked like a city while flying over the Mediterranean Sea. He reported it, and 60 years later, a group of divers went there. They were shocked when they found an entire city underwater. It was loaded with artifacts that could tell us a lot about the history of the place. Now it's one of the best underwater archaeological sites in the world. It's believed that the rising sea caused the whole city to go underwater. The Titanic sank in 1912. The wreck was claimed to be officially discovered 74 years later. In reality, though, a fisherman found the Titanic 8 years earlier while fishing in the Atlantic Ocean. He was pulling out his net when he spotted a head stuck in it. Luckily, it was just a doll's head. Years later, after the fisher had passed away, his son sold the doll to a doll collector. She did a lot of digging and research on every person who had a porcelain toy on the Titanic. She found the owner of the doll. Ava Hart was on the Titanic and had a doll with her. Ava survived the catastrophe by a miracle, but her toy didn't. Hart even wrote about the doll in her journal, and every detail matched the toy found by the fisherman. The tripod fish lives deep in the abyssal zone, around 20,000 feet below the surface. It's adapted to such immense depths and uses its tripod fins to stay still on the bottom. This creature doesn't have big eyes, but even if it did, these eyes would be useless in the darkness. Instead, the tripod fish uses its fins like antennas to detect any movement in the water. This creature doesn't have much luck when it comes to its love life, so it had to develop unique tactics to reproduce. One fish can be both male and female. The next bizarre creature is the lizardfish. It has tons of razor-sharp teeth, a huge mouth, and really big eyes, which it uses for hunting. All this makes the animal look freaky. The lizardfish lives at depths of around 11,000 feet in the midnight zone, where there is zero light. This freak of nature basically eats everything it can fit inside its mouth, from small fish to other lizardfish. On the other hand, when they see other reptile fish, they probably fall in love instead, because finding mates at those depths is not an easy task. Like the tripod fish, the lizardfish can be both male and female at the same time. When you think of a river, you usually picture it on land. Still, nature is quite unpredictable, and it created a river flowing under the ocean in California. It's running at a depth of around 2 miles. This river has everything that an ordinary river has: sunken logs, trees, and rocks. And despite its uniqueness, it's not the only one in the world. There are also others in the Amazon and Greenland. A terrifying creature was discovered near Angola's coast by a remote operating vehicle. It looks like it doesn't have a head or a body. It was sitting at a depth of around 4,350 feet below the surface. After doing research, scientists concluded it wasn't anything from a sci-fi movie. It was just a cluster of siphonophores stuck together. In 2015, some random guy was diving in Caesarea, and something shiny caught his eye. He reached out, grabbed it, and realized it was a gold coin. After that, he examined the bottom and found out that there were many more. He reported the incident to the local authorities, and they concluded that he had found Arabic treasure. The coins were made of solid 24-karat gold and were a few thousand years old, but due to the perfect salinity and temperature, they looked brand new. The coins belonged to a ship carrying cargo. It was caught up in a storm and unfortunately sank. One of the weirdest things ever discovered was found in the Baltic Sea. It's an anomaly that looks as if it was created by a different civilization. It was discovered by Swedish researchers, and they basically had no idea what it was. They had to ask tons of other scientists for their opinions. When you look at this formation from above, it's 200 feet long and looks exactly like a fallen spaceship. It's hard to believe that it's a natural formation, but spoiler alert, it's totally made by nature because the Baltic Sea has gone through many erosions throughout history. Most likely, the bizarre formation is the result of these processes. A group of divers in Madagascar were shocked when they found this 7-foot monstrosity of a knife on the seafloor. The speculation started immediately, and many said that the knife was from some giants that had fought megalodons and lived on Earth thousands and thousands of years ago. That could make a nice story, but the knife is most likely a movie prop that was lost at sea. One of the ocean's most bizarre animals is the frilled shark. It's believed that this fish is the reason for all those sea serpent stories that sea explorers of the past wrote about. These animals live pretty deep in the ocean, but sometimes they can be seen in shallow waters. It's super rare, but possible. The frilled shark has a big mouth sporting around 300 teeth. It also has a long body that looks like a lizard's, and it is truly a unique species of shark. Its prey can be half of its size because this shark's stomach is like that of a snake, and it can swallow huge fish or crustaceans. Spotting a few worms in your garden is no big deal, but after seeing a 26-foot long one in the ocean, you will make your wetsuit a little wetter. This worm is super rare, and it's completely harmless to humans. It's actually not a giant worm. It's a cluster of zooids that are stuck together in a worm-shaped formation. They usually only eat plankton, bacteria, and other tiny things that can be found in the ocean. Probably the scariest thing in the ocean that is 100% real is the Magna Pinna, which can be found at crazy depths of 20,000 feet below the surface. This monster looks like an underwater Slender Man, but it's just a squid with really long tentacles that can reach a terrifying size of 8 feet. This guy has only been seen a few times, and basically, we don't know much about this creature so far. Going to the beach in winter seems like a good plan. You can have a bonfire, build a sandcastle, search for shells, or swim in the ocean. The vibe might make you overlook the dangers ahead of you. Do you really think through the potential risks of paying a visit to the beach in the winter? The number one risk is waves. You might think it's okay to admire the view on the beach a few steps back from the ocean. Now let me introduce you to sneakers. Not the chocolate bar, sneaker, or with another name, sleeper waves. These are oversized coastal waves. They catch people off guard because they occur without warning or trace. These waves are particularly seen in Oregon, United States. People have been injured and at least 17 people have been swept up into the ocean since 2000. It got more media attention in 2011 when a memorial statue was built honoring the 2 teens faced with sneaker waves in Oregon. So, how come these waves are so dangerous? It's about their nature. They come out of the blue. With big waves, you see them coming or growing big. Plus, they form in the ocean and come towards the beach. These waves appear near the shore. It leaves less time for you to run to a safer spot. Okay, most of the time, they're not huge, as would be seen in apocalyptic movies. Yet, you can never know what nature holds. Maybe you remember this example from Mavericks. In 2010, a crowd was watching the surfing competition. Suddenly, 2 large waves struck the people on the beach. It broke the seawall and injured more than 10 people. Sneaker waves don't look particularly larger than other waves until they break and quickly reach the beach. They form in a period of 10 to 20 minutes in between soft and regular-sized waves. They can surge more than 150 feet beyond the foam line. Then they reach the land with high power. Plus, they carry lots of sand and gravel with them. Sleeper waves are more commonly seen along steep coastlines compared to beaches with wider and softly sloped areas. People named these waves, not scientists. They observed what waves do. They washed up in a sneaky way. I mean, scientists didn't classify this phenomenon as a distinct sort of wave like they did with tsunamis or rogue waves. There's little scientific research made about them. Researchers say that sneaker waves form in offshore storms. These storms transfer the wind energy to the water surface. The waves carry this energy and then arrive at the beach during times of calm weather. The larger amount of energy they obtain compared to the regular waves that preceded them causes them to go higher up the coast. Imagine you go for a walk on the beach with your dog. The waves gently reach the beach. You play the throw and catch game. You don't know about sneaky waves, so you turn into an unwary beachgoer. What's the risk? Being washed into the water trapped against rocks. Since it's winter, you tend to wear heavier clothes. The sand that sneaker waves carry can quickly fill clothing and shoes, and that weighs you down. How can people enjoy the beach safely? First off, keep your distance if you're on the beach for storm watching, for instance. It might be mesmerizing to see how waves roll in over miles of ocean. The storms hit the shore, and you look at those extreme turbulent swells transform into strong 30-foot-long waves. Finding a higher spot that sees the ocean and waves might be best. Be the eagle, not the crab. Did Confucius say that? The second tip is if you're determined to storm watch, never turn your back to the ocean. Yes, eyes on the water. Lastly, be mindful of which part of the beach you're walking on. Stay away from the logs because they hold water. The water increases their weight. In the worst-case scenario, the ocean is powerful enough to roll the logs onto you. Let's assume you're hiking near the ocean. Use the designated trails because park authorities determined them as the safest roads possible. Going off-route can sound charming, but it can be dangerous for you and harmful to the ecosystem in the surrounding area. Now that you know where to walk, you can keep your eyes open about the geological stuff. Like the rocks can be slippery, erosion can rip them off. Yeah, it's better to avoid walking near bases of cliffs and bluffs. You'll never know when a natural phenomenon will occur. It might sound a little extreme, but you may want to check the tsunami evacuation routes of the area you're visiting. Tsunamis are hard to predict, but tides aren't. Tide tables are available online. This natural phenomenon looks harmless, yet it can isolate rocks from headlands and the shore. You probably don't want to find yourself with soaked wet clothes in the ocean for no reason. Climbing up onto the logs might not be the best idea either. Sure, they look heavy and sturdy when you're climbing, but even the smallest wave can take you like a leaf flying in the air. Not just logs, but also jetties are tricky. Sudden waves can make you lose your balance, and you can collapse. Let's return to the scenario where you and your dog are walking on the beach. This time your pet sees shorebirds and chases them. Birds could be there for foraging or roosting. Your dog could interrupt their chill zone. They can lose their energy reserves. Can you bump into creatures hiding under the sand? Some sorts of creatures can be dangerous for you. Better not to poke someone's home. Take a look at this one. It's a horseshoe crab. This one looks scary, yeah, but it's safe as long as you don't step on its spines. So it depends on the type of creature you see, but generally, it's okay to explore the sand with caution. Until now, we look at scenarios where you were on the beach when they caught up to sneaker waves. You could be in the water too. You could be surfing, just like the contestant in the Maverick surf competition, or swimming, if swimming is the new case. Consider these. The temperature is lower, the waves are crazier, and there are probably no lifeguards there watching you in the winter. Swimming with friends is a safe option. Bonus, it's more fun. You should choose your swimming location carefully. Are there dangerous rocky areas? Can you easily go out if there's some sort of emergency? Know your spot. For that, you should check the weather too. Planning has a key role in winter water safety. A quick weather forecast and sea conditions check would do. You can consider buying a tow float if you're an adventurous open water swimmer. It's a flotation device designed to increase the swimmer's visibility in the water. They are lightweight and have fluorescent colors. Alternatively, you can wear a brightly colored swimming cap. We can talk more about the gear. Wearing a wetsuit is wise, as well as wetsuit gloves and boots. You can put your phone in a waterproof pouch or bag. Staying warm is essential in the winter. Don't just jump into the water at once. This can result in cold water shock. It's vital to enter the water slowly. In that way, your body can get used to the temperature. Once you take all the necessary precautions, you can enjoy the beach and explore its offers. What sort of gems can you find on the beach? A mermaid's purse? Maybe. No, it's not the purse of Ariel from Disney's Little Mermaid. That's actually an egg case belonging to sharks and rays. It's made out of keratin, kinda similar to your hair and fingernails. These purses are the place where the embryo grows. The egg hatches and the cases are carried away with the water to the beach. If you want to find one, you can look at the area near the seaweed. Have fun while searching for it! Now, I'm ending this video with a quick joke that's suitable for the cold weather of winter. What did the ocean say to the beach? Nothing. It just waved.